Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, anywhere you are in the world. This is a global show that attracts you from all over the world. It is my show called One on One with King Coco. I thank God for life. I thank God for most of us that are able to join the show today because a bunch of us are not here again because of the pandemic that has taken over the entire world. But that having been said, it's not going to stop us from getting to do what we have to do to help people of African descent, wherever they are, with 1.3 billion people in the African continent alone. We are out to get people to understand the fact that it's important to start looking at how we got to where we are. How can we get ourselves out of the situation we are as people of African descent? And how can we put this handshake across the Atlantic consistently to ensure that our brothers in the Caribbean, in the Americas, in the United States of America, all over Europe, China, wherever they may be, are adequately informed and sensitized on the direction and the trajectory that stuff are going today. We have seen the world change in so many ways, but it's our own place, first of all, to put our house in order and consistently make this platform available for our brothers anywhere they are in the world to continually interact and get to understand each other and get to equally protect the brand, that African brand, which has been bastardized and almost endangered globally. We will never sit back again and watch our brand being mutilated anywhere in the world because of the lack of coherent approach to protect that brand. We've been here for too long. It is time we start talking to each other. We've been here and bastardized for too long. It's important we start informing each other, sensitizing each other, and making all of us understand the role we all have to play to enhancing the well-being of any person of African descent. So thank you very much for being part of this show. I look forward to bringing subject that will interest us. I will encourage everyone who can afford the data, especially in the African continent, to find a way to share in this show. So equally contribute from their own perspective. Because we are here, I am speaking from Atlanta, I have my panelists from New York, and our panelists from the Trinidad and Tobago. That is spread out in three major locations where people of African descent are dominating in many ways. But are we aware of what's really going on? How are we able to share the information, the knowledge we know? So our brothers, both in Africa and in diaspora, could tap into that and leverage on it and make something out of it post-COVID. Our subject of discussion for today is opportunities post-COVID-19. As we all agree and we all know, the world has changed forever. We all have a totally new normal. It is not going to be possible to do things the way we've been doing it way back because of how much the world has changed within the last 90 days. This is not going to happen. It doesn't happen like this very often. But when it happens like this, like my friend will always say, man's extremities is God's opportunity. For every situation that happens, there is opportunity that comes out of it. I am Atai Albert, a digital transformation advocate. I have been advocating for digital transformation and adoption of technology to enhance the well-being of the African continent. I have dedicated my last 24 months, if not more, to talking to leadership, talking to students, talking to everybody in the whole hierarchy to ensure that they are aware of where the world goes. But luckily enough for us, I say luckily, the COVID situation has actually exposed the vulnerability of the entire system. So today, we have changed how we do things totally. The World Economic Forum has come with the fact that most jobs that were there before COVID-19, most of them were compelled to shut down because of the lockdown situation globally. Most of those jobs are not coming back. But good thing too, those same jobs are not coming back, are being replaced by a lot more viable, high-paying jobs. So what's our role today as leadership? What's our role today as people who are willing to support the development of the black race, wherever they are, is to bring up these issues. put them on the table. Let us understand how the situation has changed forever. What has changed? What aspect of our lives has changed? We're aware that manufacturing itself is going to change for good, because with the level of dependency we had on China, almost the entire world depended on China. So when China shut down, it was hard to understand what next to do. And I'm sure we're going to learn out of this, because we cannot continue to be vulnerable this way. If the shutdown itself continues for another long time, it's going to be a whole serious issue in certain areas of the African demographics. I'm looking at Africa now, where we probably don't have a long-term plan to ensure that certain situations are taken care of as they arise. I'm excited to be back here with you guys today. I promise to do this because I believe someone has to do this. I thank the owners of the www.t25cl.com platform that provided this platform for us to use temporarily to develop this thinking, this mindset among people of African descent, wherever they are. So you can start talking, you can start communicating effectively, you can start collaborating, you can start sharing knowledge, because they say knowledge is power. So what is it, the knowledge that you have and your brother does not share or leverage on it? So we want to encourage everybody who has time. We do run the show every Sunday, 5 p.m. New York time, 10 p.m. Nigerian time or West African time, and 2 p.m. West Coast time. We cannot continue doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's time people of African descent, the most populous people in the world, the most outstanding race, but the most endangered race as well. It's time we get back, sit down together, keep this discussion open, and keep this handshake across the Atlantic consistent, so that we can all get to understand where and how we can get to work together and improve a lot. I thank everybody for finding time to log in. Please, if you are consistently want to be part of this show, or want to be part of our panelists, we will want you to send us your email using the Facebook chat forum, so we can actually invite you as one of our panelists as we go. And so taking us back to the show, I want to welcome my brother from New York, Mr. Duncan. And Mr. Duncan, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good.
King Coco.
Yes, sir. This is King Coco Show, man. At all times, I look forward to talking with you, because you are a moving encyclopedia of knowledge in no matter the sector you want to talk about. Also, all the way from Trinidad and Tobago, I have the privilege of having Gerard. So I've spoken with him a couple of times in Trinidad. He's very passionate about the situation of the black man all over the world. He's very, very passionate about how we can consistently keep this handshake across the Atlantic, so we can keep sharing these ideas whereby we could be able to empower our people, give them the leverage to be able to step up ahead, but most importantly, post-COVID-19. Mr. Gerard, can you say hi to your brothers all over the world?
Oh, good evening, King Coco. It's certainly a pleasure to be with you guys. And Mr. Lenny Duncan, Professor Lenny Duncan, it's a pleasure again. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Anytime, man. I look forward to sitting across you somewhere in Port of Spain one of these days, so you could share a very cold coconut drink, just watching the cruise lines come back to work, because right now those are all threatened sectors of the economy. And like we were saying, we are aware that there are a whole lot of ways things have changed, and we are talking about a whole new normal. It's not possible that we will fully go back to what it used to be. Life has changed forever. I said this 2 months ago, and I think I'm even more correct today. I have been totally embedded in how we can provide leverage based on the knowledge we all share to our brothers globally, so they can all take advantage of it. My areas of interest is high-end digital technology. I believe that with technology, the world will be a better place. And we have seen that outside technology, nothing has survived COVID-19. everybody was on lockdown. Our lives of how we feed, how we take our medicines, how we learn, how we do everything has changed and much more dependent on technology. So with this in mind, we equally sat back with a group of our brothers to discuss where have this impacted strongly. How can we share this knowledge with our brothers all over the world? If only they will listen and do something with it. With the knowledge of the jobs that are disappearing, with the knowledge of the new jobs, we have seen that with every situation that's happened, the medical field has been hard hit in such a way that it's scary. You will have a lot of medical workforce tomorrow if nothing is done. But that's an opportunity right there for our brothers to take advantage of. We are aware that if just a few months ago, America was rejecting everybody, but today they're begging for everybody who has some medical assistance to support what is going. With this comes every job in almost every other sector of the medical field. This is interesting and this is huge. And we have to address it as a very important opportunity for people to take advantage of. We have identified a whole new potential way back into digital transformation, digital applications. And this is where we could actually leverage on. But I know that I have a party that knows how reluctant the leadership in Africa is when it comes to technology. You cannot totally blame them because there's so much to be done, to be thought about over there that they are not really focused on where the world is moving to, and the world is moving really fast. So technology is another area we'll try to tie up most of what we do today because we've seen that to be a very key area that our people should leverage on. At the end of this discussion, we want to ensure that the knowledge that we share is being taken and whoever will benefit from it should put our people first in line to benefit out of it. Like we said, knowledge is power. We're going to consistently sustain this platform for the collaboration we spoke about, for information passage and brand protection, because our brand has been really bastardized, So I don't intend to keep you guys for too long. I appreciate if you guys will be able to show up here as my panelists. I will first of all go straight to my brother, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan, how's New York today?
Oh, man. I don't even know what to say. It's okay. Temperature is okay. But the deaths are still occurring, as you know. Today it's 55,000 people have perished, unfortunately, in the U.S. New York itself, total deaths so far is 22,275, but just last night, was another 367 deaths. But it's actually fallen. But when you don't measure death by plateaus and peaks, you measure it by individual people. So sometimes it starts gets in the way of the humanity. The empathy we have to have towards each and every family and each and every person that perishes or that moves on, is totally unexpected. So we have to bear that in mind instead of getting drowned in all of these statistics. Even as a data scientist, I shun even doing these reports, these analysis of pie charts and line graphs. I said, that can't represent people. People are people, The friends and the fans and the family and all the followers in the same faith all consist of us, we, the Africans, the Hispanics, the brown and the black people, the yellow people too. All colors, all hues, From Trinidad, as Gerard would tell you, we have a mosaic of people. Every single race on the face of the earth you'll find in Trinidad. So that's New York, man. New York is the world within a city. That's how you look at New York City. It's a world within a city. So with that said, I yield to you, my brother.
Yes.
What do you
Lenny.
need? What do you need? What?
Thank you very much, my brother. New York is the heartbeat of America, the Big Apple. I remember when we all sit back here till 12 midnight to see the ball drop in Times Square. I don't think if they ask any of us to predict if Times Square will ever be this quiet, that we ever imagine that Times Square will ever sit like that. We've seen racism and xenophobia action happen across the world because of xenophobia, because of COVID-19. We see Africans being harassed all over China lately, even though the entire process actually happened from China, which is interesting. We've seen mega companies lose money. We've seen Macy's, 10, all these massive chains lose money. And we know who is making money because Amazon is looking up to employing hundreds or 50,000 upon Walmart for just their supply chain, which is supported by technology. We've seen the demand for oil almost totally disappear. At this point, even if you come around my house with a barrel of oil, I'll tell you to take it away because I won't have where to keep it. And we've seen the shortage of car parts because of a dependency on a certain part of the world. We're looking forward to everything we wanted to come from China. And today, the world is at its knees when China was shut down. So we've seen a whole lot happening. We've seen flights canceled globally. You can't expect this. But the beautiful thing, we've seen tigers walk the street. We've seen reptiles take over the streets of Florida. We've seen tigers take over the streets of South Africa because human beings are all gone indoors, which is awesome. We even hear that the air over China has totally cleared, that there's never been like that. What's up with you, Jura? What's going on with TNT?
Wow, TNT is good. So far, we have only had 115 cases.
Whoa.
And a death, but we thank God for our government acting swiftly to curb the pandemic from spreading. So I'm thanking God for that. But it's great. It's great,
That's
we are totally
awesome.
locked down. We are indoors. Yep, we are indoors. We're just doing what we got to do to make sure that everyone is safe from this virus at this point in time.
Tell me a little bit about the tourism industry, the cruise ship industry that I see at the background. I'm speaking with my brother when he was in Trinidad. I always see one of the vessels out there. What's really happening with that industry right now?
Well, at this point in time, our borders are locked.
Whoa.
So no cruise ship will be coming in, and it's locked probably for the foreseeable future because, as you know, with pandemics, we don't know when it will really end. And as you know, there are no vaccines at this point in time.
That's scary, man.
It's very, very scary, So we are just, like everyone else, we are waiting to see what is happening. But like you said, we need to get ourselves ready for the post-COVID situation, with new jobs being created.
That's the whole
We're just
mindset.
doing that, my friend.
That's the whole mindset. Man,
Yes,
Len, what's up? What's up, man? Why are we having this discussion, Lenny?
Well, life goes on. Some of us will make it, some of us will. Ultimately, it's God's own doing, God's choice as to, which one of us will stay, which one of us will go. It's all in His hand. So we just have to pray for our brothers. We put our friends and family first, and family and friends, and whichever way you want to put it. But at the end of the day, this happened before. This is not the first time the world has had a pandemic. We have had the bubonic plague. 100 years ago, you had the Spanish flu, and so on and so forth. What is important is that you are you, and only you can actually, you and your Maker can control your destiny as this. With that being said, and all things being equal, what are the best job opportunities? I want to say by virtue of COVID, but I would say by detriment of COVID.
By detriment of COVID, that's a better way. So you're going to sound a little bit sympathetic to the cause now.
Exactly. Exactly. No one expected this happen. But, as you said, man's extremity is God's opportunity. And necessity is the mother of invention all around the world. But in developing countries, necessity is the father of finance.
Correct.
In other words, when you need to do something, when you need to make money, the one thing you can count on for the African continent and the African diaspora is to find a way to generate some form of income. In this case, it is obvious that because we have a medical crisis, the best profession right now has to do with the different levels of medical services. Okay?
Right.
Number one, nursing. Nursing, according to something in the United States called the Beige Report. The Beige Report is a report that all the federal banks in all of the United States create this report that gives a local analysis of the economic health of each area. Like, for instance, in the Atlanta area,
right,
the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. In fact, that's the only Federal Reserve Bank that is headed by a brother, Mr. Bostic. Okay,
I know.
But Atlanta, you're right. I know you don't know that, but it's the only bank. The only Federal Reserve Bank in the entire United States. There are 12 districts. The one in Atlanta is the most powerful one because it handles Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. That's the entire South. And the entire South is the core of the black economic power in the United States. With Atlanta is the second largest black city in the entire United States. So one has to look at what kind of jobs can we get in the areas where we need to be strong. And if you think about it, if indeed that there has been a skewing of the deaths in the black communities by judgment of bad underlying health conditions like, the diabetes, the asthma,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't need to belay that again, okay? Because even just to think about what happened, it just gets me so sad about that. But we have to overload ourselves with healthcare professionals. Because if you overload yourself with it, you can take care of yourself. You see what I'm saying?
The knowledge itself will help. The knowledge itself will help,
Right. Choose the professions that can sustain our communities, our neighborhoods. Choose that profession first, because that profession is in very, very high demand. Now, it takes a long time to become an RN, as you would know, because you're from that family as well.
Right.
But what happens is that there are many other professions that relate to the entire health service value chain. You have nurses aid, you have the LPNs,
right.
You have the RN.
Phlebotomies, you have a whole bunch of nurses, aides, everybody, yeah.
Exactly. But that's the core profession. Around the core medical profession, you have now the digital medical services. Think about it. That ventilator is part of a digital medical services. It involves some sort of circuitry that understands how to keep that air pumping. Then there's a brand new area now where we can create a lot of technicians in the black and brown community. It has to do with digital disinfection or digital sterilization. Okay?
Right.
That has to do with UV light, using UV light to clean hotel rooms, okay, look at Airbnb. Airbnb is one of the largest non-hotel chains for accommodation anywhere in the world. But who is responsible for cleaning those units? And how can a customer feel more confident that if they go into an Airbnb, it will be devoid of these viruses?
Right.
Right. Well, using UVC light, okay, and you keep hearing about that over and over. It's a very good example of it. Sometimes you go to these clubs and they stamp your hand before you go outside, so when you come back in, they know you were in there.
Right.
Okay? The light that shines on your hand to see that stamp, that's a UV light.
Whoa.
It's a low-powered one, so it can't harm you, right?
Okay.
But the highest power of UV light, of course, is the sun. Okay? If you stay too long in the sun, some skin tones, you get skin cancer. Okay? But in terms of managing UV light, you have certain wavelengths in UV light that will kill the shell of the virus, okay? And because of that, it renders the virus sterilized. In other words, it cannot replicate. It cannot replicate its RNA. I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on TV. But I exist in a world.
No, Len, let me just come in right there, so we'll be a little more interactive, okay? We have identified a very key area because of the pandemic or whatever they call it, which is the need to provide a whole lot of health care services to people who are already vulnerable, who already had a very high level demand for healthcare workers. And now we have a crazy situation where most of those that were already on the line already have gotten ill. And this has injected a whole different fear thinking, fear mindset for the workforce, which means that if something is not done urgently in a massive scale, because it's all about the scale we're talking about now, and we know that we can have, like in a country like America, we can have that numbers here to sustain our aging population with underlying problem now that are highly being impacted by COVID, which is why we're looking at this 50,000 deaths, So this is what is going on. And we've now identified the fact that technology could be used to enhance it. Let me ask you, if technology could be, because I know that a couple of different countries have brought in technology to help locate possible corona victims or infected patients and indicate how certain areas are more prone to infection based on digital data that have been analyzed to provide that. How can technology reduce the infection of healthcare workers? As we have noticed in New York, the police department in New York and most of the healthcare workers in New York, most of them, we know almost 10-20% are infected. How can technology help us manage that situation a little better?
Well, the thing about it is you got to always look at the supply chain for sustainability of sterilization. What has happened, when they were talking about, the hand sanitizers and all of that, right? Okay. Because the hand sanitizers involve the use of raw material like alcohol and petroleum jelly and all the things that goes into it. At some point in time, we have to ask, who is providing the input into that? Okay. So therefore, in order to sustain a sterilized environment, like any lab, like when you have these digital labs where you open the hard drive and you have to have it completely sterilized, it's the same thing. Okay? Now, if you use UV light prior to someone entering a space, okay, you can indeed, within 20 minutes or so, completely sterilize the place, depending on the strength of the wavelength of the UV light. So that's the new type of products coming out now. You see a lot of that coming out. Of course, it's coming from China. Not to say that China owns the patent or owns the technology. All those technologies were developed in the labs of the United States.
Right.
But because we don't do the manufacturing, it went over there. Of course, you know what happened. So basically, one of the key things in protecting oneself is the exact advice they're giving us, social distancing. If you look at those hospital areas, there are no social distancing. People are running helter-skelter because this virus overwhelmed them. Okay? If they are prepared long beforehand, one of the key things in preventing contamination is to reduce your exposure to the patient. Now, there's a situation where St. Luke's Hospital is actually staying remotely based on these new devices. You can check someone's blood pressure. You can check their heart rate. You can check the oxygen levels in their blood. There's so many things you can check remotely. But it has to do with the digital have and the digital have not. Not all hospitals are created equal.
Right.
And in terms of how society is divided up into TOP, the top of the pyramid, the MOP, the middle of the pyramid, and the BOP, the bottom of the pyramid, most of the hospitals where people die are the bottom of the pyramid because there aren't enough isolation space, okay, there is a shortage of beds, and these hospitals didn't have time to ramp up.
And I'm not cutting you off. I'm not cutting you off, Len. I think in line with what you just spoke about, the whole concept of remote workforce, remote support, remote digital medication, digimed platform, like something I know is out there right now, but it's not really fully into use, which is the remote treatment of patients. Because I think the whole idea about COVID is that you don't even come into the hospital unless you have a severe attack. So if you just have a basic symptom, you call the medical department. What you hear is that you need to call them back if you have a severe attack because they don't have space to keep people. So how can remote telemedicine, that's the primary definition of the way we refer to it before now, even though we're in totally different era of digital technology. How can telemedicine, using that, how can it support and help people still from infection?
Okay, now I repeat, I am not a doctor. Right. I don't play one on TV. So let me tell you right away. I'm coming from the point of view of a technologist.
Right.
Ultimately, everything comes down to technology that implements a solution. Okay? Now, first of all, telemedicine is not what we're talking about. We're talking about digimedicine.
Right.
Digimed.
Right.
Digital medicine. Because the first thing is being able to monitoring the patient. Okay? Monitoring the patient, you can do it face to face, which today is dangerous because, of course, you have cross contamination, either from the service provider to the patient, or from the patient to the service provider. But there are what you call wearables. You know, the whole wearable movement, where you have the Fitbit and so on that attaches to your wrist. There are so many things you can tell about a human being by attaching these type of devices. Okay?
Correct.
The oximeter will determine the oxygen levels in your blood. Now, for someone who is a qualified doctor or even a nurse, having these vital readings, they know what that means in their own profession. Our job as technologists is to provide the digital ecosystem to allow the capture of data through sensory devices, okay?
Right.
The transmission of that capture to a device through a system like Bluetooth. Bluetooth, of course, we all use Bluetooth for the speakers in your car and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But Bluetooth is simply a carrier, okay, of a frequency that is the same as Wi-Fi frequency, okay? But
right.
it's shorter distances. So within a hospital environment, okay, once you attach these probes, these devices that can check the heartbeat and there's so many things you can check. And, you know, science has reached so far right now.
Yes.
The thing about it is, when it comes to the hospitals that serves the black and brown community, they are normally public hospitals, okay? And public hospitals usually are operating at very, very, very low margins, if any at all.
Okay.
Versus private hospitals, where you have investors who invest in the sustainability of rich people, okay? That's
Correct.
what happens.
Correct.
I mean, I have been consultant to some of the top hospitals within the New York area in terms of providing technology over the years. And I would tell you, I mean, you go in there and you wonder if you want the Star Trek spacecraft or something.
Let me. Okay, sorry, man. I'm not going to cut you out. I know I want to bring in Gerard a little bit on his perspective. He said the quick intervention of the government and the reaction towards the situation has been able to keep the numbers really low. 150 is really low even though Trinidad is a fairly sizable population, but 150 is pretty low. Gerard, what did the government really do effectively? Because I have my people in Nigeria, in Kano, who don't want to believe there is COVID because of the literacy level in some part of that demographics. They have refused to hunker down effectively and embrace the lockdown. And today, something that was so comfortable is not looking as good as it was, because we just had about 640 people died in the last 3 days out of a city, and most of them will likely relate to this. So what did the TNT government do with the massive cruise ships that come in there, and we know the role of cruise ships in the entire spread of COVID-19?
Well, in the very first instance of our first case, our government took the very tough decision to close our borders, preventing anybody from coming in. So that way they had a handle on it immediately, so that anybody coming in from any cruise ship where our citizens were concerned, they quarantined them immediately for the first 14 days. And in some instances, they added an additional quarantine for 14 days extra to make sure that the prevention of anybody getting the COVID-19 spread to them that way. So that's what the government did. They closed our borders, and they instituted total lockdown where only essential services are now working within the city.
Whoa.
And our country.
So that's
what they did.
That's awesome. I don't know, I know you guys are very much westernized compared to those of us that lives in Africa. You are still believing in a whole lot of religiosity, spirituality. So on that basis, people are busy trying to look up to the church, to the pastors, but I've not seen one pastor that requested that COVID-19 patient be brought to him for healing, which is a subject of discussion for another session. But that having been said, a lot of countries in the middle of the pandemic shut down their borders, stopped exportation of medications, some even stopped the exportation of food, some even pulled in the wartime rules to see how, like America now pulling wartime rules, to see how they can keep most ventilators in America, despite that they were paid for by another country, manufactured by another company here. What would you advise leadership in most of these countries, having seen what dependency has done, that now countries will wake up and say, listen, we can't keep on exporting because we don't know how much this thing will last, and we don't know how much food we have that will sustain our population, so we can't keep exporting for you countries. And those countries that were totally dependent, what will be, I know opportunities are being created, in all the situation we're talking about. So what do you think leadership in different countries should appreciate based on this kind of situations and decisions made by other countries?
Okay, training, global partnership. Those are the most fundamental things that is needed. United Nations, when they developed the Sustainable Development Goals, they did global partnership to bring everybody together. And we need that today in this world. One can't look without each other. And even as you close your borders, you recognize, like the President of the United States was saying that the United States now has to depend on other people for what they need, something that they would have not admitted too easily. But those are the facts that we are facing. We need to realize that in today's society, we are one big global country, one big global world.
Right.
Everybody needs to work together.
Correct.
Right? So that's what it is. So we had to utilize goal number 17, as I mentioned, the global partnership.
Thank you.
The Sustainable Development Goals. And that's what will work.
That's a subject that I'm very privileged to understand a whole lot. I totally agree with you on that. But it takes us back to the United States president when he was busy complaining on everything being made outside America, that I want to see more stuff made in America. And so COVID-19 has equally exposed the vulnerability, whereby something as cheap as a face mask becomes something where multiple departments within the same country will bid on the same product with the same manufacturer. This doesn't look good, to be honest with you. And I don't want to say the COVID-19 came in with so much, but I want to equally emphasize the fact that it has exposed the vulnerability of countries' dependency, especially like my own country. Luckily, that within the last 4 years, there was a whole major drive to localize rice production because I think Nigeria is one of the highest rice consumer globally. So this had now given us a food for thought because if Nigeria was still dependent at that scale of rice importation, despite the economic implication and the unemployment implication that it brings to bear, but the fact that just making this staple food available could have been something of a major issue, and that is easy way of driving a society to anarchy or serious starvation situation. So I want Len, between me and you, we have mentioned healthcare.
Yeah.
We have mentioned healthcare. We know that the hospitality industry is down for a long time. It's not going to be quick. It's going to be back up like that. The energy industry is really, really hard hit. Today we're talking about oil that we don't even have storage to keep what we produce. We're not even talking about how to sell. So what will the energy industry how can it repurpose itself when the demand is pretty low? And how can it repurpose itself? Because I know we've been talking about this. How can the information that they have, how can all the other variables that they could bring to bear, how can that be repurposed to help create more jobs, provide some more leverage in terms of revenue generation?
Okay. Well, first of all, understand one thing. You know, I've been working in oil and gas, energy, say that the real revenue that you generate in energy is not the oil pipeline, it's not what comes through the gas pipeline. It's now the gas information pipeline. So the new energy companies are no longer the Exxons and the Chevrons and all these runs. What's the other one? BP.
Right.
Bloomberg. It's CNBC. Because every time you want to see what the price of oil and gas is, you have to look at those stations. The amount of revenue they're generating from advertising, from subscription, whether the price goes up or the price goes down. The NYMEX, the New York Mercantile Exchange, is where all the oil and gas and all these commodities are traded. I've never seen an oil tanker next to the NYMEX. I've never seen an LNG tanker next to the NYMEX. For 138 years, they have controlled the trading of global commodities by using information. So at the end of the day, Nigeria, Africa on the whole, now has the voting power of OPEC. So in other words, most of the OPEC countries are now in Africa, 7 out of 13, okay? The GCF, which is the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, okay?
Right.
Trinidad and Tobago is involved with that. So is Nigeria. When you combine all the African countries and, of course, Trinidad, you have the voting power in the GCF. The problem is there's OPEC Plus. And OPEC Plus is like Mexico and Russia and a couple of the other guys who are really not part of the core of OPEC. And we have to give credit to Nigeria, your guy, Bakindo. He is the Secretary General of OPEC. A lot of people don't know that. But he's one really, really cool guy. The key to his King Coco is that we have to get involved in the marketing and monetization of information that relates to the sales and purchase agreement of every single oil deal. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be affected by the sudden movement of oil and gas prices, okay, by detriment of the lack of storage. There's only 1.3 billion cubic meters of storage in the world. It's all filled up. If that's not the exact number, I'll correct it to you.
Right.
But I'm telling you one thing. Even with these sales and purchase agreements, if you have to lift oil from the Niger Delta for a client, OPEC or off OPEC, where are they going to store it? China, strategically over the years, bought a lot of storage tanks in the Caribbean area, like St. Eustatius and all these places, on the way to the Panama Canal, because the Panama Canal can now handle 12,500 TEUs per tanker or per ship, whereas before it was just 4,500. So places like Trinidad and Tobago and, of course, Nigeria, you have to be able to increase your storage capacity because the war that is going to be fought, what I mean, the economic war between the OPEC countries, OPEC Plus, and the shale industry in the United States, it's not going to stop right now. You follow what I'm saying?
It's about starting. As a matter of fact, it's about starting, because it's a whole new dimension,
Right. But a country like Trinidad and Tobago that has 100 years experience in oil and gas. I mean, I started in oil and gas at IBM when they were converting Shell and Texaco to our local branded companies. So that was my first job. So in a way, I understand oil and gas from the point of view of technology very, very early, and the point of view of monetization I learned when I went to Wall Street.
Okay.
So the area now that we can make money in has to be the information.
Awesome. I am. You see, I was just leading you there, kind of, because we have been on multiple projects trying to develop because we know of the existing technology that is there to help countries with history, with a whole lot of information. I'm telling you that my last 12 months of advocating for digital transformation out of Nigeria and the whole of Africa has exposed me to a whole lot of major limitations that's inhibiting these projects. Because how can people sitting with seismic data of over 40 years, with contact information of support service industry, contact information of how they develop the local content industry to support all these localities, despite the hazard that goes with all these situations, this information would be useful for new emerging oil frontiers, and that could be equally alternative revenue stream that could come to these countries if they are aware of what they could do with those information, because those information could equally help these other new oil domains to tap into their experience and equally jump over the pitfall that they had to deal with when they all started 50 years ago. So that's awesome. Gerard, I want to bring you in because before we started, I looked up, I did some due diligence and looked up the countries that had corona early. Some of these countries, majorly China and some countries in Europe that are gradually now have plateaued out. They call China, Wuhan has gradually opened up, for business a little bit. But we have carefully looked at these countries that came out of this struggle because they were early into lockdown because of the devastation that this pandemic brought to them. And we now see where their high demand on support is in terms of what kind of skill sets are they now looking for to support the post-COVID, because they are now almost near post-COVID, So we have seen how China, we have identified these few areas. What do you think, or where do you think, apart from the few that we have mentioned, where do you think, I want you to lead me into areas of manufacturing, reduce dependency on China. How can these other countries now gradually take advantage of COVID, because we have products that we no longer use. We have developed substitute for some products we used to bring from China. Some of them we have already know that we don't really need them the way we thought we did. How can other leadership in different countries now leverage on the knowledge of where this product could be alternatively produced?
Certainly. As you know, computer assembly, 3D printing of equipment. Long time we had to wait quite a while for the equipment to be manufactured, but today with 3D printing and 4D printing, it can happen overnight. Very quickly, our industry is transformed to one that is digitally enhanced. That is something that we always have to look at. For the time that was going in the past where we were analog, and then we are now digitally,
Right.
So imagine you could print circuit boards and circuitries for systems very quickly. for mass production. And, that's something that we have to take advantage of. Africa with its 1.3 billion diaspora can do that. Trinidad is already 5G,
Mm-hmm.
So those are the technologies we need to work with. Information, digitally enhancing our skill set. Because the only thing that we can actually do and keep is services. And once we understand that, then we can do better.
You are very much on point, because under that, America attracts a lot of its revenue from services. So that's the point. Well, you are listening to One on One with King Coco. It's a Sunday medicine that we brought about to help people of African color collaborate, share knowledge, and ensure that we can see more of our similarities than our differences. It's a handshake across the Atlantic. This happens every Sunday, like I said. So stay tuned, because the discussion just started. Duncan, I have sat back. Yes, sir. I have sat back and looked at some positive side that came out of this. Which one of them is climate change, because the Himalayas that was never seen from a distance is today being seen. The air over China. The air over China.
Wow.
The air over, yeah, for real. It's not been seen for a long time. The air over China today is seen as when people want to go on vacation, when we were trying to run away from there some time back. And the dependency of, I take my country, Nigeria, on imported rice would have been something that would have strangled the leadership by today if they had not moved away. And we all see how much dependency on China as a production hub alone is affecting the entire world. We are going to be seeing lots of this situation all over the place. What do you think are the possibilities of these jobs that are going to be created based on this positive side? The climate change action, the animals are now being freer to walk the streets. The manufacturing hub should be diversified from China as a hub. What do you think, and how do you think this could create more jobs, and where do you think this job should be going to?
Okay, that's a very
recording paused.
I'm not hearing you. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you.
Hello?
Okay.
I'm here.
I think, okay. First of all, remember, climate change is part of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In December of 2015 in Paris, the Paris COP21 agreement was signed. Okay? Nigeria signed it. Trinidad and Tobago signed it. All the CARICOM countries signed it. All the ECOWAS and AU countries signed it. The challenge has always been, we sign intergovernmental contracts and then we don't actively advocate for them. We do the mitigation and the adaptation of climate change, of climate action, but we don't do the advocacy. And it turns out that Trinidad and Tobago and Nigeria are the two best advocacy countries in the world, because to advocate, you need music, movies, magazines, live shows, a lot of church people, a lot of gospel singing, and so on. It's part of the creative economy, King Coco, and that's where we fail. Because even though we have an overwhelming advantage in the creative economy to advocate for anything that we want, through post-colonial consumer syndrome, I always mention that, the fact that we were more or less wired not to believe in each other.
Right.
We are supposed to be getting together with Black America. We're supposed to be getting together with Afro-Brazil and Afro-Caribbean and 1.3 billion people. We have an over-embarrassment of 2 billion people that we can't use. That's not right. That's not right. So the jobs with the climate change has to do with the UNFCCC, which is the UN Forum for Climate Change Conference, okay?
Right.
There's something called Sports for Climate Action. Sports for Climate Action, we were supposed to have done that in the Tokyo Olympics coming up. Remember what we worked on in Nigeria late last year? When we
very well.
Working with you guys?
Yeah, the ECOWAS
Okay.
team. We're trying to get the ECOWAS team ready for the International Olympics.
And look at that. That was for 400 million people, right?
Right.
And 15 countries. The United States is only 330 million people. I don't think people understand the magnitude of just one part of Africa. West Africa, to the people who don't know, is actually ECOWAS, Economic Commission for West African States. The Caribbean, on the other hand, have 15 countries called the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. Okay? But 15 versus 15 is not equal to 30. So it's 15 versus 15. Because Nigeria, ECOWAS is 400 million people, larger than the United States in terms of numbers. Okay? So in terms of how do you generate revenue from the climate change? In the Caribbean, we have a very serious problem. We have the hurricane. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, which is like actually 2017 and 2019, we had very, very bad hurricane seasons. Remember Hurricane Dorian?
Very well.
Hurricane Dorian was last year, okay? That hurricane came 2 months after we had a conference in St. Lucia where the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, our favorite guy, you know, he's from Portugal, and we have many Lusophone African countries who voted him in. And of course, having Amina Mohammed, our dear Ms. Amina Mohammed from Nigeria, who is the Secretary, the Deputy Secretary General, is also kudos to you. But here's the thing, King Coco. What happened is that in St. Lucia, the UN Secretary General told the Caribbean heads of government, okay, he was actually commending them for having the vision for a Caribbean resilience zone or climate change resilience zone. So the Caribbean would have been the first climate resilience zone in the entire planet. And here comes the UN Secretary General saying that he's going to support it. The problem is, a lot of times when we have these meetings and we get demonstration of support, we don't have the follow-up meetings with the respective countries immediately. Okay, so within a space of 2 months, here comes Hurricane Dorian.
It's almost here. It's coming in here. You know.
It was here.
Let me bring. I'm not shutting you up, man. Let me bring my brother in, Gerard. Gerard, why has people of African descent, even though we've been balkanized into small countries, why have we not reached out across the Atlantic, both to Africa, to America? Why haven't we done more collaboration, do more trading with the Americas, where most of our brothers were just taken with the drifting current of the Atlantic Ocean through Brazil into that neighborhood before most of them were shipped into America? Why did that slave route remain abandoned, and why how can we leverage on that to create more work opportunity and create more revenue for people of African descent? Because it means we have been creating our own economy and finding a way to sustain our own economy. Gerard, are you there?
You did?
Yes. Did you hear me? Hello? Hello?
I'm not hearing him.
Gerard, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, I was asking.
I'm not hearing
I said we've not been able to after 400 years, most of our brothers came through the Americas into the United States of America and all over the place. We have not been able to keep a sustainable handshake across the Atlantic to ensure that we work together more and use our own resources first of all before we try to reach out to any other race. Because the Jews keep the economy almost 8 times than we keep our money in our own economy. The Caucasians do the similar thing. But it's only in Africa that we are permanently and consistently looking for partnership with people that don't want to partner with us. Why hasn't been the situation, and how can we work around that, sir?
Well, you know, sometimes we beat up ourselves and say, why? The question is, why not? Because you have to look at one very simple thing: numbers. China is 1.3 billion people, or 1.4 billion, but only one government. India, 1.39 billion, one government. Africa, 1.3 billion, 55 governments. So do the math. Where do you go to make the decision? So we have to start looking for the perfect situation and master imperfection, if that's what we call it. Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who are laughing all the way to the bank because we are only focusing on one thing. Where are our leaders? Where are our leaders? Where are our leaders?
No. Okay, hold on. Right there. Just hold it right there. Why has the continent of Africa itself, not just leadership, because most of us would rather go for vacation in America or fly to Europe, but very few of us, in fact, I've had more white folks go for vacation in the Caribbean because they appreciate the nature they have there. Probably they would have wanted to do this in Africa, but they've really stigmatized Africa so badly that they themselves are scared of going to where they're stigmatized. Why are we not going to do that?
Part of the problem is that when you have the answer, nobody listens. Okay? All right? And that's the thing. Because it's not that we don't know what to do, but if you romanticize your problem, you will realize it's as simple as this. Nigerians and most West Africans go to Dubai. Okay? All the shopping there is only about 6 hours away. Okay? The Caribbean is about 5 hours away through Cape Verde. The problem is if we don't advertise to each other, we don't know each other exists. Okay? When we come to the United States, we have the Caribbean diaspora, you have the Nigerian diaspora, the Ghanaians have the Ghanaian diaspora, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, we are all living in the African diaspora in the United States or in UK or whatever. All right. The thing about it is, if we keep wondering why, we will never find the answer. We have to start. How do we start? You and I. You and someone else. Myself and someone else. At the end of the day, we would have started something anew. Because sometimes we live in the problems of the past instead of the profits of the future. And I think at this stage in the game, because of this COVID situation, look what happened to the world. Whether you're rich or poor, okay, one little tiny microscopic virus that we can't see level the playing field. So why can't we do that with one little thought in our mind? That let's forget about what we didn't do right. Now that we know what to do right, let's just get it on. Let's just, as Marvin Gaye would say, let's get it on.
I got the Galaxy Chief online, Len. That's somebody I want to weigh in on this perspective because I know I was on a show the other week and we're discussing why haven't we here in America been able to really build strong relationships with African American brothers, despite the fact that some of us have tried, but it's always difficult to get brothers from here to reason with us for whatever reason. Why, Galaxy Chief, this one is for you. You want to tell us how we can build a better relationship, not just with people of African descent here in America, but as well as people in the African continent and the Caribbean. Because we're creating this platform to change the narrative. So we need to address everything in this true perspective.
Thank you, my brother. Great show, great question. As you know, the topic of conversation that I have been talking about ever since I've been meeting you and Brother Ivy and also my other friends that I have in Nigeria. And please excuse me for being late. I just got back in another town for a couple of days. But I came in at a great and perfect time. And I really, really like that question that you imposed because I've been asking the same thing, as you know. And it seems as though we can't come together on that. And to the brother who was just speaking, Brother Rod, I've never met you, but I respectfully disagree with you because we have already started that for 20 years. I have been making eye contact with home, and I've been there a couple of times. I've done some things. A lot of people know me. I know them as well. And yes, we have discussed here explicitly on my show and on Coco's show what the historical problem is. And it's good that we understand and teach on history, just like any other civilized people do, just like the Jews who talk about World War II. So yes, we have to talk about what happened on the west coast of Africa some 400 years ago. Not to dwell in it constantly, but we just want to make sure that both sides understand this situation historically, from the diaspora side and from the African side. And so now we understand the problem, what is the solution? And of course, we can't get it done globally with 120 million people in Nigeria and 350 million people in this country, about 40 million of us here. Of course, but we got to start the grassroots level, and we got to make some degree of change progress. Like Brother Coco just said, like I have said, we got to reach across the pond, reach out with the handshake, and just get a few for right now. We got to start somewhere and do something, and start doing business transactions here from the front. And they can't be one-sided, whereas we're just over here trying to get money out of Africa, or Africa steadily trying to get money out of us. Let's exchange right there at a meeting. Right. Both sides can buy, sell, trade, teach, and learn from one another. If there is no balance of trade, then we're just screwed up like we are right now. There's an imbalance. But what we want is that equilibrium across the pond, but we just got to start with a few. We're not going to do it on the mass, but let's get it started with a few. I don't care if it's selling pair of tennis shoes to somebody. We got to start somewhere.
Yo, thanks, Andre. Appreciate that. We got to start from somewhere. I've always been a major voice on this, but I reach out to my brothers from different areas of Atlantic. I've kept a lot of relationships with my friends that I've met here for the past 15, 20 years here in America, and but we've not just done one transaction together. They're still scared of coming out of America to dabble into Africa. I know you have been to Africa a couple of times, and you have some awesome experience out of that. I just had a question on my Facebook Live that a young man says, how can Nigerian youths step forward and take advantage after the pandemic? Len, what do you think Nigerian youths could actually look up to in terms of these opportunities we just identified? Is it like get some training or find their ways into the next available vessel across the channel that they never make it through, or what they do?
Well, King Coco, in all my years in going to Nigeria from New York and so on, and then going back to Trinidad and so on, you see the commonality between everyone. But one of the key things you have to look at in Nigeria is what you call the demographic dividend. Okay? By 2030, the largest group of employable youth will be in Africa.
That's just 10 years. That's just 10 years from now, man. That's just 10 years from now, huh?
Yes, but remember, 10 years don't just suddenly drop from the sky. 10 years starts now. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Everything that is in huge amounts starts with a trickle. We are now in the last 10 years of the UN SDG goals. This is the most important 10 years. It's also in the middle of the decade of people of African descent. In Nigeria, you have a median age of about 18.5. It used to be 17.9, just changed, okay? That is key in terms of what the youth can do. Now, under the World Trade Organization agreement that Nigeria signed along with all the Caribbean countries in 1995, the General Agreement of Trade and Services allow a Nigerian youth to stay in Nigeria and export the services in return for foreign exchange. Okay, now you're doing it to a certain extent with the Afrobeat music, you're doing it to a certain extent with the Nollywood movies. The only problem is that you're giving it away without getting proper return by uploading it to YouTube. Whenever you play YouTube in the United States, okay, it's a local service. But when that same YouTube plays in Lagos, it's an export of services. So when you upload your videos or your music, when the youth upload their videos or their music to YouTube, okay, and then you have to listen to it again in Lagos or anywhere in Africa, you're actually importing by exporting from yourself. So you're paying for your own stuff. And the way you pay for that is all the advertisers in Nigeria who advertise before an Afrobeat song, or before a Nollywood movie, or after a Nollywood movie, the advertisers will pass that cost on to Nigerians by virtue of the product that you buy. You actually pay for the advertising cost. So in other words, you're giving your stuff away and then paying for it in return. Okay? That's the same thing with Trinidad Carnival. Okay, the same thing with Trinidad soca music, same thing with Jamaican soca music. The entire black world, 2 billion of us, we simply give things away to the G7 countries and then re-import it thinking that we get it for free. YouTube is not free. Facebook is not free. You pay for it in terms of the advertisers from your country that tries to get to you.
And put the price on their products.
Put the price on the product. And the price is so invisible that you feel as though you're doing something positive. In essence, the new African Continental Free Trade Agreement that was just signed by Nigeria on July 7, 2019, brand new era in the entire world. I'm not just talking about Africa and the African diaspora. The AFCFTA is the largest free trade area under the World Trade Organization. Okay?
Right.
That's what China is after. That's what all of Asia is after. We have to trade with each other because the Caribbean and Black America and Afro-Brazilians, okay, we are the 6th region of Africa. The diaspora is region 6 of the AU. Since 2003, okay, so you're talking about 17 years now, we are part of Africa, but we don't behave like that.
Whoa.
But with the new AFCPA, we are able to trade. In other words, someone from Oakland, California, who has made a product, and that person is recognized as a member of the black race, okay? Not just the black race, but anybody who is in solidarity and wants to support Africa as a mega union of countries, okay, are admitted into the diaspora. We don't discriminate against any race. What we do, we allow people to identify with the culture, okay? And by doing that, the youth now can find a massive market. What is important is that the countries in the Americas who are well endowed, Black America is $1.3 trillion spending power, which is larger than the GDP of the Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE put together. We have to see it in those terms. We just can't look at Black America and say, okay, that's just Atlanta, that's New York, that's Brooklyn, part of New York, and this is the Bankhead part of Atlanta. No. You have to look at it in the totality of who we are as a people. When we look at it like that, and people see that we are doing that, they will pay respect to the type of deals that we can make around the table, even with the Chinese.
Whoa, okay. Len, you see, I totally agree with you because I think we had this discussion some time back. But at this point, it is very, very important that we try to implement treaties when we sign. For some strange reason, you see, I used to hear when I was growing up, 10-year rolling plan, 20 years rolling plan by African countries. Then I don't know whatever happened for those rolling plans because they were supposed to help guide, development and investment in line with where the benefit that will come with those rolling plans. Kweku, let me just come to you now. I just noticed you have been on the line for a little bit. What should African leadership in African countries do to prepare their population to take advantage of the over 50% workforce that is expected to come out of Africa? Hello? Is Kweku there?
Who's that question?
Are you there?
Yeah. Excuse me, brother. I was caught up in listening to what you guys were saying there.
Okay. You want me to repeat that again for you? Or you heard me?
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm really, concerned about the statement that was made earlier in terms of, Africa being not under one governmental body. You got 50 different entities that are administering policy, procedure, or whatever is going on the continent.
It's kind of like we are as a people scattered all over the globe.
They scattered us.
And,
That's what they did to us, Kweku. That's what they did to us. It was deliberate.
Yeah, but it also seemed it's happened on the continent where our people are the masses, but yet we're scattered into 50 different entities, which makes it difficult to be able to set up the kind of infrastructure to be able to combat these people who are trying to put pressure on us, especially places like China. I was reading earlier today that China wants to take over Africa so they can move with some of their people there. They got too many people in China. So,
Scary, man.
That's not an African problem. That's a China problem. Yeah. And I think that somehow we have to get these leaders of these 50 different entities to come together and start to re-educate people so that they can take control of the continent, of its resources, and so they can block these people. They can be together when they confront China and Italy, places like that, who are trying to really just take over and run everything. And before you know it, they're running the governments because potentially right now they are running the governments because they have us so divided that we can't focus on them.
That's scary. Quickly, that is the point that we have to figure out. But you see, I'm one guy who believes that some of this weakness could be strength. The same number of 55 countries we're now having an issue trying to have a consensus in terms of agreement now gives us 55 votes at the UN or most of the international platforms that we all have, we all belong. So we can still get to work together. And let me tell you something. The process of choosing leadership in Africa, I think, is a major problem with the development of Africa. Because I've been very much embedded in the political process where most of leadership is chosen. And for some strange reason, it's not like out here where you've got to be a doctor or a lawyer. You must have a track record of doing something before you start going to business. In Africa, young kids that come out of school today just want to be like an aide to a politician, and knowing too well that all they need to do is to run behind that politician for a little bit, and when there's a time to go for the next election, the man would, without thinking whether they have anything to offer or they have any experience, will just say, listen, man, you'll be my PA for 4 years. You're going to be the next councillor. And automatically, that guy will win the election because he has a godfather who wants him to be a councillor. And after being a councillor, it's now left for him, based on how he manages that first opportunity, to ride on that till he becomes probably the House of Assembly member or a legislature at the state level, and now graduate to become a legislature at the federal level. So these are people that end up running things in Africa a lot of times. It's not a matter of that. We saw a potential in this young man and we decided to use him as a tool to be able to do something for his people. No, it's based on, as a matter of fact, they would rather put a camel in that seat than put you that just came from Harvard with all the knowledge, because I don't think that you are too smart and there's no way they could hang on with you because you come and show them how stupid they are. So that has become how Africa has chosen leadership. And you can't build on nothing because nothing begets nothing. Am I right? So that's been our typical problem. Len, we're running out of time. Guys, it's still on One-on-One with King Coco show running on T25CL.com, Galaxy Talk Radio. This is a platform that is designed to bring people of African descent from all over the continent, as well as any other the diaspora population is, to interact together, talk together, find how they can protect their brand together. So we encourage everybody of African descent who is interested in finding out what's happening across the Atlantic in different cities in Africa to be part of this discussion. We'll try to sustain it as long as we have the capacity. So Len, we're running towards the end of this discussion. Tell me a little bit about digital training and how can we get digital training, because I see digital training as a key foundation in digitally transforming Africa. Because if you put a technology in a place that cannot support it, it will provide a way of equally taking all the wealth of the country out by expatriate quota. We will build them at a very high cost. Tell me, how can we get leadership to buy the training of the young population in Africa?
Okay. Training is allocated based on the TOP, top of the pyramid. That is the 1%ers, very wealthy people. They want to go to Ivy Leagues and brand themselves with Oxford and training. Then you have the MOP. This is the middle of the pyramid. These are the doctors and some of the lawyers and so on. But the majority of people in Africa belong to the bottom of the pyramid. And that type of training, okay, the key is to market and monetize the creative economy. Because the creative economy, the supply chain is your brain, your left brain, and your right brain coming together. The right brain is the creative side, left brain is logical. Look at the type of movies you created. You got to give yourself credit, because if you keep thinking that you lack this and you lack that, you'll focus on what you lack. If you focus on what you have, then what you have, okay, you have 200 million people in Nigeria alone. And we just can't speak about Nigeria because you guys are everywhere. So let's talk about Africa. The AFCTA, the African Free Trade Area, will now provide an opportunity for training in the areas of, number one, music and movies, because the rest of the world is ready, willing, and able to accept that from you. They already do a lot of that. But the way you monetize it is not what people pay for your music, is what your music can sell. And that's what's happening too in Black American music. People don't want to pay for the music. But how do they make money? The same problem Africa now has, Black America has, and the Caribbean has. Okay? What your music can sell, what your movie can sell is worth more than what you pay for it. For example, if you have a movie with a Mercedes-Benz, and in digital interactive television, you can click on that Mercedes-Benz and go and see the car dealer. What is that worth to the car dealer to get 500 people taking a look in Atlanta at the car that he has? It doesn't have to be a Mercedes-Benz. It could be a second-hand car. Well, that is called monetization. To the extent that if you have movies that people see for free, free sounds like a bad word, but if you really think about how monetization works, if you increase the total number of eyeballs and earlobes to listen to music videos or to listen to your movies or see your movies and so on and so forth, what you're doing, you're creating a massive consumer base so you can do mass market money movement. Okay? In that way, what we can do by controlling our own digital media network, Digital Africa World Network, what happens is that we can now project our creative content across 100 countries in the diaspora. And the way you generate money is those content streams will be accompanied by advertising before, during, and after. That's one level. On the second level is sales, the ability for that movie to sell something. And in order to do that, the technology has to be interactive. The technology cannot be streaming. Everybody is into streaming. But streaming is at least 20 years old. But people are pushing it because they don't know any different. The fact remains, King Coco, is that the expressions of social media has actually taken most of us in the black community backwards, not forwards. Because once social media took hold, we were no longer innovating and developing our own technologies. We were just posting, attaching friends and fans and followers and so on, and that song's really, really good. But we're not generating finance. Remember, as I said before, if you play in the key of F, you're going to get finance. Friends, family, fans, your fraternities, all the females and fellas. Okay? Fashion, you get finance. The one thing you can't create on Facebook is finance. You can do everything else. You're actually amassing a huge consumer base for the social media companies, right, where they use your conversation.
Right.
Okay? That's the problem. Okay? So we have to change that.
Okay. Okay, then. Thank you very much, Len. You guys are still on to my show, One-on-One with King Coco. the handshake across the Atlantic. I thank you guys for being part of this discussion. I have my own takeaway from this discussion. I want to throw it out there for those of my people, brothers who are logged in from all over the world on Facebook, and those of us that are on this platform. We have gladly identified, based on precedents of areas that just came out of the COVID-19, China and Europe. We've seen that there's a very high demand for technology support of Oxford. We've seen that there's a high demand for health workers, and it's very important that we educate our people to go and get some serious training on these areas, because it's very important that most of these jobs are going to be there for the next couple of years. And we don't need to consistently play catch up on it, because we are some of the most intelligent people, and we just need to be able to prioritize our time and where we put our energy, and the reward could be very, very enormous. My brother Gerard, I want to have a take from you. How can we improve our collaboration and communication among people of African descent across the Atlantic?
That's me?
Yes, Gerard. I mean Gerard.
Oh, Gerard.
Gerard. Sorry, let me unmute him. Gerard. Hello, Gerard?
Yes, hi.
Sorry, man. You've been on mute. I
Me?
said, yes. How can we change this situation and get us to talk to each other, communicate with each other, and do business with each other? Marry each other. Bring our kids to get to know each other, so that we can gray out these rough edges that kept us apart for so many years.
Well, it's quite simple, King Coco. I've always discussed by Professor direct flights. Direct flights. You mentioned the safe trade earlier on that has been utilized.
Right.
And under the climate change, they would have had the problem with the gases in the air of all of us going through that situation. But we know for a fact that flights are taking longer. Imagine to go to Nigeria from Trinidad, you have to first travel to either Miami or England and then go to Nigeria. But if we have direct flights, that will certainly bring us better and closer to each other. And that's why we need an easier route for us to do that. So that's the simplest way to get it done.
Whoa.
Let us have direct flights to each other.
Cool. You see, I can't wait to be in Trinidad, man. But for this COVID stuff, I was planning to be there this February, man, because, you guys got stuff that reminds me of real African people, You got some nice people, some nice carnival. I don't know about your food, because it's something we want to all try. We have so much wonderful food, wonderful human beings, wonderful culture, beautiful equally, that will make us start having some level of dignity amongst ourselves, and belief that we can sustain an economy amongst ourselves. We identified the fact that healthcare will still be in high demand. The digital technology support of all levels, be in trading, in learning, in medical provision, in governance. Because right now, I can tell you guys, America, because it had deployed the digital infrastructure, the system is still running even though people are sitting at home. But I bet you most African countries are not doing the same, because nobody deployed nothing. It will take them forever to even listen to you properly. But we are getting their ears now. I don't want to say thanks to COVID, but COVID has really exposed the vulnerability of how the entire system could virtually shut down. So we are not going to keep beating each other much. We have most of this content on the www.t25cl.com, Galaxy Talk Radio. We've had a lot of other shows that we've had over time that are available for download and listening, in line with helping us build this handshake across the Atlantic. But for me, I will keep this sustainable. I will ensure that we open this platform every Sunday, or even more than just Sunday, even once more, twice a week, to ensure that we constantly protect and defend our brand, to ensure that we are aware of what's happening in different enclaves of where black people live. We see, I thank God for social media as well, because what social media has done shows me that there's hope for the black race, because we're almost exterminated without anybody raising a voice. But today, muscle a black guy in China, and the entire globe will have to respond to it because it becomes a matter of minutes. So let us thank technology for what is brought to our lives. Let us enlighten our people to take advantage of the knowledge we're sharing today. Let us get some more training to our youthful population, because at the end of the day, even in just 10 years, we're expecting 50% of this population from Africa. Then there is need to jump into training and hold the leadership responsible and accountable to train the people to be able to take these jobs. I appreciate talking to Gerald from Trinidad and Tobago, Duncan from New York City, my brother, the Galaxy Chief from Oakland, California, and Kweku from Oakland, California. Yep. Ironically, I had most of my African brothers on Facebook Live, which I encourage them to exercise and spend this data on something tangible. Let us migrate from the mindset of being slave queens and slave kings. Let us use the Android phones and the iPhones we have for something very positive, education and learning. The world is not waiting on us. The world will keep on moving, and we cannot permanently play catch-up and think a young generation will ever catch up. Let's do the needful today and put each other ahead of time. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me being on this show. I look forward to having you guys same time next week on another version of this show. Please, my Facebook Live partners, I thank you guys for logging in, for that data you've invested on this knowledge. Go do something with the information you just have. On the whole, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody that has logged in and those that couldn't log in today, to continuously wish that we can build a platform that will help us as people of African descent have a better life. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you guys some other time.
Okay, King Coco.
Thank you, sir. Kweku, appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
All right, guys.
Your line has been disconnected by the moderator.
So thank you guys on my Facebook Live. I appreciate everybody that tuned in to be part of this show today. I can't afford to thank you guys enough because knowledge is power. Let us keep on sharing this knowledge together and take it back home. Let us impact on leadership in our home countries to be able to see and do the needful. Let's have the right people with the right knowledge to direct them on the digital transformation of Nigeria as a whole, because as of today, we got kids at home that cannot go to school, apart from a few private schools. We have government at home that cannot do much because there were no digital infrastructure deployed. Let's take advantage of the knowledge we're sharing today and prepare our young population to take advantage of what's on the table. We cannot always play catch-up. Let's jump ahead and bring digital transformation to bear to help us do much better. There is need in the health field, healthcare sector, from nurses to nurses aides, LPN to phlebotomists, to all kinds of people that work within the healthcare sector. Please get some training very soon. Western countries are going to be looking for a workforce to come and support the massive degradation that COVID-19 has brought to them. On the whole, I thank everybody for being part of this discussion, and I look forward to responding to your questions on my timeline. Thank you very much.